Good evening, everybody. I thought you were drinking, Anita.
I think I was. I'm over it now, though. I'm back. I have a very
the reminder popped up just when I hung up, Valerie, so I'm okay.
Glad you made it on either way.
Right. I thought I was so good to do by cleaning. I have a mailbox and I put all the links in when they come, and I didn't do that. And I just went through and erased a great swath of things. My vote's being solicited from both parties, so I have a lot of email.
Ah.
One, two, three. Oh, we're here. Good. Anything before we start from the committee? We'll be glad to have people on Monday night. It will be brief because it has to be. Valerie, is everyone, is the first presenter here for Ninth Avenue?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
1 second.
Or a number of people, where do I say? Oh, full attendees list. Okay. Okay, I see a number of people. Welcome to the meeting of the Landmarks Committee for Community Board 2. We'll have the usual presentations as though it were a real meeting of the application, then question and answers from the committee, then questions and comments from the public. And then at the end of the session, we will write the resolution or conceive the resolutions. And Valerie will let in each presenter, and if you have other people with you, just let her know and she'll upgrade them as well. So whoever needs to speak will be able to. Thank you. The first is 2 Ninth Avenue to install signage in the canopy.
Okay. All right, I've moved.
Great.
Anita, you have some sound that's cutting you in. Can you mute yourself?
Julie, are you presenting for Ninth Avenue as well? I know that you're on a couple this evening.
Yeah, so hi, good evening, it's Cass Stackelberg. I'm presenting 2 Ninth Avenue and my colleague Julie Rosen is presenting 600 Broadway and 770. So
Okay.
I think you may have Brandon Padron also on our project team who would be speaking tonight for 2 Ninth Avenue. Do you see him?
Yep.
If you can promote him as well to a potential speaker for 2 Ninth, that would be great.
Sure. Do you want me to keep Julie on for this one, or would you like me to move her back?
I think I'm going to be just me for this one with Brandon.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Great. All right. Should I go ahead and share my screen? Are you all ready for me to begin?
That'd be great.
Okay, great. Give me one. I think you have to enable screen sharing, and then we're all set.
Carter, can you do that? I don't, wait, hold on. Let me see if I. Let me see where you do that.
What was the question, Valerie?
Oh, the screen share. I've just not used to turning that on and off.
Okay, it should be turned on here.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, well, So there's the architect, actually, Patrick Lunn, is probably also either in the waiting room or somewhere. It would be good to advance him in case you all have questions for him. So.
All right, I added him.
Great, thank you. Okay, here we go. 1 second to find, here we go. Okay. All right. Terrific. You all can see our screen.
Yes, fine.
Okay, great. And I'll advance this one slide. Terrific. Thank you. This is so we'll begin. This is Cass Stackelberg from Higgins Quaysbarth and Partners, and I'll be presenting our project tonight along with Brandon Padron from our client Lucid Motors. We're very excited about this project. This is a project, as I mentioned, for Lucid Motors, which is an American automobile company founded in 2007 and based in California that produces electric vehicles. And it's a very exciting opportunity for Lucid, and I think for the city and really for all of us advancing electronic vehicles. The project site is at 2 Ninth Avenue. The photo of the building is on the far right. It's located in the Gansevoort Market Historic District. This is a 6-story warehouse building constructed in 1913, and it has frontages on 9th Avenue and Little West 12th Street. You can see it here in the center on the site plan, located here in red, fronting onto Gansevoort Plaza. And then the district map here on the far left, just showing the site of the project in the district. The scope is actually quite simple. The proposal is merely for the installation of 2 signs on this canopy, one fronting onto 9th Avenue at the entry on 9th Avenue, and one on Little West 12th Street on the over the entry to the building here. So before we get started, I would like Brandon just to talk briefly about Lucid, because it was new to me when we first started. The company was new to me when we started working on the project. I think perhaps it might be new to some of the committee members, and I thought it might be worth just having a brief introduction as to who Lucid
Briefly,
is.
Please, Brandon.
Be very brief.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Padron, and I'm a design manager at Lucid. As Cass mentioned, we're an American auto company focusing on the electric car segment, and we're based in Silicon Valley in Newark, California. As it happens this week, we just launched this vehicle, the Lucid Air, and the showroom that is this project that's before you is the first showroom in the New York metro area, and we're very excited to be joining the community here and to kind of show everyone what we have to offer. So thank you for your time, and we'll continue on with the presentation.
Thanks, Brandon. So just continuing on, this is a view on the left of the existing building. As I said, sort of a solid 6-story warehouse building with the existing canopy, and then a proposed view on the right with a sign panel above the main entry on 9th Avenue, and then a separate sign panel on the Little West 12th Street or Gansevoort Street side to the south. I'll mention this later in the proposal, but because of the underlying zoning, we are able to have a halo lit sign with some illumination on 9th Avenue, but this sign, because of the zoning facing into a residential district, cannot be illuminated. So they will appear the same. They're built the same way and all the detailing is the same, but this sign has a very simple halo illumination off the back of the letters, which I'll show you in greater detail in a moment. But the proposal is merely just for these 2 signs mounted onto this canopy, which, as you'll see, is actually a relatively recent vintage for the building. Some other existing photos of the building. It's an arts and crafts style warehouse building, as I mentioned, built in 1913 with 2 street frontages onto 9th Avenue and Little West 12th Street. This simple steel riveted canopy with a corrugated metal deck was built or installed in the 1980s. Looking at some historic images of the building, this is the building as it appeared in the 1940s. You can see there was signage on the upper floors of the facade. There was a large sign here at the corner. You can see it in detail here. And there was a smaller canopy historically at the entry to the warehouse with signage on the side of this canopy. And that canopy, as I said, was removed in the 1980s, and the current canopy was installed. You all know the district very well. Obviously, Gansevoort Market Historic District is and was historically a very vibrant commercial district that catered to the markets, to the restaurants, to the piers along the Hudson River. And this kind of signage, these panel signs set in the front edge of the canopies, is a very typical historic sign type found throughout the district. So this is a view on the south side of 14th Street, close to Ninth Avenue. You can see this kind of sign panel, similar to what we're proposing at 2 Ninth here on the south side of the street. And then this view about 10 years earlier in the 1930s, looking west from the elevated station across 14th Street. Again, signs here along the front edge of the canopies, on the sides. It's a very typical sign type. And a few other images here on 13th Street, here on Gansevoort Street. So we're deriving our signage proposal from what is really sort of within the sort of genetic makeup of the historic sign types in the district. You may be familiar with these projects as well. These are, excuse me, more recent projects that have been reviewed by the commission and obviously by your committee across the bottom. These are actually signs that have been installed with staff level approvals, but you can see there's a history more recently of signage on front edge of canopies. There's also these two images here are illuminated signs, halo lit signs that were reviewed by the committee, the CB2 committee, and also by the commission and approved. And then this sign across the street on 9th Avenue from the project site for Restoration Hardware with just dimensional letters sitting on top of the canopy. So this is just meant to show that there have been similar signs approved both at the staff level and by the commission since the designation of the district in 2003. An existing and proposed view left and right, again, just showing where the sign is located. This is the main entry to the showroom or the gallery on 9th Avenue. And then here on the south elevation, over this larger entry, this entry is sort of a secondary entry, but will be used for vehicle entry because it's considerably wider. And these doors swing open and the cars will be able to be driven into the showroom. Proposed elevation, again, just showing the position of the sign relative to the entry doors situated directly over the main entry. You can also see the size of the sign relative to the building. It's sort of proportional. It's a large scale building. It can take a sign of this size. And then the south elevation, again, situated over this secondary entry, which will be used for primarily for vehicles to move in and out when they're brought in. Oops, sorry, a detail elevation on 9th, just to give you some dimensions. The sign panel, which is just a simple black painted metal panel, is 2 foot 3 inches tall and 15 and a half feet long. The letters themselves are just 9 inches tall. So again, looking at the overall scale of the building, it really is sort of proportional and comfortably sits within the elevation. On the south elevation, similar sized panel, 2 foot 3 by 15.6, and then the letters again are 9 inches tall. The ones here on the south side will not be illuminated. The ones here on the west elevation will have this halo illumination. Looking at some section details, so this is the section through the 9th Avenue side. So the sign panel, as I mentioned, is 2 foot 3 inches tall. It's 2 inches thick. It's just simple black painted metal. And then the letter itself is 9 inches tall, 1 inch thick, and then there's a space behind it. So the illumination comes from the back of the letter. You never see the actual illumination, but it's just sort of a soft glow behind the letters. And then there's this sort of mounting plate that anchors onto the face of the canopy. And then all the electric is hidden behind the sign panel. So you'll see this is the section for 9th Avenue, and then this is the section for the south elevation. It's identical, it just doesn't have the J-box and the electric. So all the dimensions, the sign panel, the letters, they're the same thickness. So the intent is for these to look the same, but in the evenings, the sign on Ninth Avenue would have this halo illumination as allowed by the underlying zoning. A little bit more detail on the sign. So again, looking at it in section, the illumination is set within this channel. The letters themselves are an opaque stainless steel, brushed stainless steel. And then there's this space behind the letter and between the letter and the sign panel where there will be this glow. You can see here, this is sort of a rendered view where you have the opaque face of the letter and then a glow just along the edge. And then finally, again, the two renderings, a view of the corner of the building showing the sign here and here, and then the two straight-on views of the two sides of the building. So it's, you know, it's a simple application. I think in terms of the appropriateness, the signs are located at the entries to the showroom, to the gallery. They're installed onto non-historic fabric. This canopy was installed in the 1980s. And then I think just sort of more broadly on a district level, this has historically been a very vibrant commercial district. And there's obviously ample evidence of similar types of signage seen on canopies of buildings of 2 stories all the way up to these larger scale commercial warehouse buildings. So we feel that it fits comfortably within the historic sign types and positions seen elsewhere in the district. And we'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, and do the committee members have questions? Raise your hand and Valerie will let you speak. Are there members of the public who have questions?
Looks like Brian has a question.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to clarify, this seems like you're utilizing the existing storefronts. Do you not have any signage on the storefronts, the windows, the entrances themselves?
There'll be just simple decal signage for hours of operation, but those kinds of items are reviewed with the staff. So it's not signage, but it's just typical sort of operational information.
There's no change to the storefronts?
No, the storefronts were installed by the previous restaurant, and other than sort of painting and repairing hardware, there's no change to the infill, to any of the masonry. It's really just the sign installation. Obviously, there's interior construction and other elements that we're working with the staff, replacing the HVAC equipment on the roof, but you can't see that. So all that's being handled by the staff.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I do. The height of the marquee is 2 feet, or what is it? It's
2.3 by 15.6.
3. Okay.
The height of the sign.
Yeah.
So the letters themselves are 9 inches, and the sign panel, the back panel, is 2 foot 3 inches.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Looks like we have questions. Brian, I assume your hand is just from earlier. Michael Levine.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Cass. How are you? Cass, I have a quick question for you. It seems as though this signage would have been approved at a staff level. Can you tell us why they have sent it to the community board for approval? It seems to be very similar to the other signs that you mentioned were approved at a staff level.
Right, so it's a little bit larger than the ones that were approved. And let me say, Michael, how nice it is to see you at community board too, and at our own community district, and having migrated uptown.
I know, Cass and I know each other from CB1 work. So Cass, what was your answer?
So it has to do with two things. One is just the size of the panel itself, which is a little bit taller than the ones that the staff had approved, but also the illumination. The halo illumination, which doesn't fit. So the staff rules allow for a halo lit signage, but only if it's on masonry. So if this were attached, let's say, on the brick here, the staff could approve it. But because it's on the canopy, it doesn't fit neatly into the staff's rules. So they asked that we come share it with you and present to the commission.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Are there other questions? Okay, we'll move on then, please.
Oh, Sarah has a question. Sarah.
Oh, so sorry. I can't see this.
Actually, Michael just stole mine. So the question's already been asked and answered. Nice to see you too, Cass. Take care.
Yes, Sarah.
Okay, now with questions finished.
Finished. Okay.
The next application, if you'll be downgrading and upgrading, please, Valerie. 201 Sullivan Street, to install a handicap ramp.
Okay. Move. And patchwork. All right, here we go. All right, Alan, we are ready for you to share your screen with us.
Hello, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, everyone. Alan Azarkin from Building Violation Services. We're proposing a handicap ramp on the side of Sullivan. We're asking for a slight exception to recess the door in about an extra foot from where it is currently to meet the 5-foot turning radius for the accessibility wheelchair. And given the limited width of the sidewalk, it would be easier and more prudent for the pedestrians to have a smaller footprint on the sidewalk and having a little bit of the coming inside of the restaurant. I can show you a drawing of that. So this is the ramp that we're proposing, and we're proposing a piece of the landing to recess 1.5 feet into the building versus where it is now. And that is this gray door over here. This is where the ramp will be.
Have you no rendering? Yeah, good. So just so we can see how it is. Okay, could you please give me the dimensions of the amount that is on the sidewalk itself?
Roughly, it's 3.5 feet by 5.5 feet onto the sidewalk. I'm sorry, 13.5 feet by 3.5 feet onto the sidewalk, if you include the landing.
And how much is the tree pit to be reduced to accommodate that?
We're not touching the tree pit.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said it had to be.
All we're proposing is going inside to the building.
Oh, I understand. Okay.
Right now, the exterior door, as you can see in this picture, is almost flush with the property line. We're proposing that it be widened to 5 feet, so there'll be a door and a vision light.
I understand.
And
okay, I thought you said you also had to.
I apologize.
That's fine.
And being recessed in a little over a foot. So in total, it'll be 1.5 feet in from the property line.
Right.
Compared to.
Okay. Are there committee questions? I'm sorry. What is the finish? I didn't write that down.
It will be mostly glass.
Repeat, please.
The front entryway of the residential part.
And it's painted black, I gathered.
It'll most likely have chrome finish framing, but it could have painted black frame if you prefer. But right now we're just proposing a very simple, clean look.
Chanel?
Okay. Are there committee questions?
Looks like Anita has one. We also want to make sure we check on Doris, so I'll unmute her and ask next.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you hear me? I can't raise my hand on because of my unusual arrangement, so I apologize. I can't do it electronically. Yes, I was wondering, the drawing that's in front of us, could you explain what that brown thing growing out of the top is?
That is the existing ductwork for the restaurant, Joe's Philosophy, which goes up to the roof. That's the exhaust vent for the restaurant.
Uh-huh.
That's
And
existing.
you have a picture of that as well? I mean, you're lacking in pictures, by the way. It's very,
This is it right here.
uh-huh. And so you're leaving the arch the way it is, which looks very odd to me.
Oh, arch?
Yeah, in the existing, go back to the drawing. At least that's what the drawing's showing.
Oh, behind it. Yes, we're not
Yeah.
touching that.
And what is this this gray material?
This is most likely black iron, some sort of maybe 18 gauge steel.
No, the gray on the facade, on the street facade. Here, the gray, it says city. What is that?
That's painted brick. And I guess they painted the restaurant name on it, New York City, and then on the other side, I guess also the street names, Bleecker and Sullivan.
And let me ask you, is there a better place to locate it so you're not right up against a tree? I live down the street from this, and these streets are insane.
So exactly.
People.
So originally, Landmarks preferred us to have it in the front entryway as not to discriminate anyone with any handicap. But I think putting it on Bleecker would be right over here where the main entrance is, would be much more intrusive and would be more limited by the sidewalk width. So we propose to have it on the side of Sullivan, which is not so heavily traveled by the public. It's not as big of a main artery as Bleecker Street is. So to have the alternative, having it over here, would be more intrusive and significant onto the public right of way. So
and what is the distance, and I'll be done. What is the distance from the proposed ramp and landing to the tree pit? That's one dimension I don't see here.
It's about 4 feet.
That's impossible if you look at your drawing. If that's 3 feet, it looks like it's 30 inches or something. If you look at your plan.
It could be closer to maybe 3.5 feet.
All right, well, I think that's very important, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah, that's something we're going to deal with DOT with. That's a DOT issue that we have that we will be addressing with them, getting their permission. But as far
this is something that we'll mention in the in the resolution.
Right. So.
Okay. Are there other questions?
Yeah, one. Or let me see if Doris has any first, and then I'll yield my time 1 second. Doris, I don't know if I can unmute her. It's always funny. Okay. My question is, I know you addressed why it was less traffic or whatnot on that sidewalk versus on Bleecker, but currently, is this establishment have tables outside? Is that possibly why as well? Are they participating in the?
To my knowledge, I don't believe they have a sidewalk cafe permit. And just looking at the sidewalk width and all the obstructions, I can almost guarantee they don't have a sidewalk permit. It won't meet the clearances with all the obstructions that I see.
Right, but they're not even doing like the temporary permit.
That currently what they're doing based on COVID, I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
This came about from a lawsuit, but that's not here.
Got it.
I have a question. Where is the main entrance to the restaurant?
It's on Bleecker. It's this right over here. It's on Bleecker.
Right near the corner?
Yes. Let me maybe zoom out. Over here, where the lady's going in.
Doris, is where the lady's standing in the picture that you have. The lady of the street is standing in front of the door.
If you could also say that it's right at the corner. I don't know if she has. I don't know if she's just listening through the phone or not. So if you could just be a little more descriptive.
It's closer to the corner, to the intersection, but it's on Bleecker. It's where this lady is walking in. There's 2 steps to go into the restaurant currently on this side versus the other side, which is less than 6 inches to the sidewalk. So it's less of an invasive ramp based on code requirements of 1 to 12. So for every inch, there would be a 12-inch rise.
Okay, we understand, I think. Are there other questions?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Sandy.
I sort of have 2 questions. What's the window that the new proposed ramp is sort of blocking a little bit? And was the decision to put the ramp on the Sullivan Street side, did it have anything to do with the fact that the windows on Bleecker Street in the restaurant seem to be opened and can open, and so it wouldn't be as attractive to have the ramp on the Bleecker Street side because of that?
The operations of those windows, whether they open or not, was irrelevant to the sidewalk ramp. That wasn't a factor. It was really for the public right-of-way not being on Bleecker. Sullivan, there was a little bit more space to create such a ramp, and it would be a much smaller ramp, almost half the size than it would be if it was on Bleecker Street, which Bleecker has 2 steps versus Sullivan only has 1 step.
My last question is, when someone goes in through the ramp, what part of the restaurant are they entering?
So we're sort of remodeling that area, but that is more or less back of house. That's where the restroom area is. So we're going to be reconfiguring the restrooms. So they're going to be opening into the back of the restaurant.
Where there are tables?
There are no tables there currently. This is the area. These are the 2 new restrooms, the kitchen, and this is the restaurant here. So this is the other entrance in the front.
Yeah.
And the handicap ramp will be in the back side entrance, which is kind of back of house. Zoom out a little.
So it's near the bathroom and kitchen.
Okay.
Yes.
That's really not our concern.
Okay.
Can we move on then?
Yeah, Eugene has a question.
Okay.
Sure. Actually, I have 2 questions, but I think the first one is, I was just looking at the street view, and it looks like there's a fire escape on the Sullivan side. Is that going to, how does that affect, I guess, the placement with the ramp? Is the ramp underneath the fire escape at all, or?
It shouldn't. I believe the ladder drops down on the other side over here, so it's away from the ramp. But that's a very good question. The tree is blocking it, so I can't clearly show it.
Yeah, it looks like the ladder's on the south side of the escape. So, I mean, there's still clearance, right?
There is clearance, yes. Yes.
And my second question is the 2 window, maybe this was covered by Sandy's question, but the question about the windows, if those windows are open on the Sullivan side, is that going to obstruct, is there enough is there enough room for the wheelchair on the ramp? It's not how much those windows, it looks like they open out.
They do. They won't be operational. Once the ramp is installed with the railings, those windows will, a few of those windows will not be operable anymore.
Oh, okay. All right. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Eugene.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
is that me? Oh, sorry. What is this A104, accessible ramp A, with 3D views, and it looks like you did a study to do the ramp inside the restaurant?
We did, but it would demolish the restrooms, the kitchen. It would be way more complicated with structurally and almost eating up the entire space of the restaurant, putting them almost out of business. So to put such
Okay, are there other questions?
That doesn't appear so. I did note that JoJo's, the tenant there does have a permit for the temporary open restaurant. That's it. But otherwise we can move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on then.
Yeah, I will move. You could unshare your screen, Alan. We'll move you.
The next is 85 Christopher Street. The
Thank you very
application to replace all the windows on the street facade above the ground floor.
Albert, do you have a question? You're muted. Albert, we can't hear you. Okay, we'll just,
You got it?
oh, now we can hear you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear what you said.
No, I do not have a question.
Oh, okay, it looked like you were waving. Thank you. Great, so let me go back to the participant list. So I believe that we have Stephen Scabora is the applicant. Stephen, we've promoted you to panelist. You can share your screen.
All right, so I can unmute. Can you hear me?
Yep. And if you could let the committee, you could let us know. I know that Florence had forwarded this presentation just within the last 2 hours. So just letting the committee know that if you downloaded the one in front of you from the site, if you didn't get it from the email, it's the one in the email.
Yeah, I just sent it like a couple hours ago. I was collaborating with the window manufacturer on the shop drawings until the last minute.
Okay, just letting everyone know.
All right, so hi, I'm Stephen. I'm presenting for PVE Engineering. The address is 85 Christopher Street. It's in the Greenwich Village Historic District. So the proposed scope is we're replacing the existing unapproved windows with aluminum clad wood. Just for some background, the building was built in 1872. It's a 6-story residential walk-up. It has 22 units, commercial tenants on the ground level. So the original windows were double hung, but they've since been replaced with these 1/1 windows. The precast sills and the decorative wood element at the lintel are original. So the existing windows were covered with this metal capping, and so they did a probe to see what the condition of the original wood was, and they were found to be deteriorating, splintering, and in some areas they were completely missing. You can see here this 2x4 was what they found underneath.
We'll stipulate that you need to replace them.
So the reason we're proposing aluminum clad wood is because if this was 1 story higher, it would actually be able to be approved at staff level as metal, but since it's 6 stories, not 7, it isn't able to be approved at staff level. So And so these are just some of the neighboring buildings. And so all of the windows in question would be viewed from a distance. Okay, so here's the historical photos. And you can see even in the 40s, oh, where are we? The windows had already been replaced by the 40s with the 1/1. So it's a little bit hard to pinpoint an exact color. Oh, these are showing up. So this is the primary elevation as it's existing, and this is the proposed. You can see the difference is pretty subtle, basically just the addition of the mud-tin and the small changes to the window frame itself. Here's the color samples. Again, here's the existing window and the proposed. And finally, the sections. So the existing, the differences are pretty subtle. This one, I don't know if I can zoom in. So this is the existing metal capping that was placed over the historical shape. And so we're proposing to match that historical shape a little closer, including this, it's a kind of a two-step instead of this one-step. And it's similar at the sill. Oops. Sorry about that. And then finally, here's the I'm sorry about that. I don't know how to start from the last slide. I'll just do it this way. It doesn't want to go to the last slide for some reason. Sorry about that. And here's the same section, but as a horizontal cut. And you can see the proposed mud-tin in the middle, and I think that just about covers it.
Okay, thank you. Did I understand from the written, the 2/2 was chosen because that's there's some reference of that being original to the building?
So we're assuming it was original to the building because the other, let me go back one sec. So these these four buildings were kind of built together as with a unified corner or unified facade, and they all have the 2/2. And so we're assuming that this was the same and it had just been replaced for some reason.
They're cheaper.
Yeah.
Okay, and the painting is, I assume you want them to look like wood with the painting.
The painting of the
Whatever
new
color. The painting of the new windows.
So
what
the
color are they?
brown color is just to match the let me see, the general color of the other windows in the neighborhood. And yeah, to emulate the wood.
And what is it, black or brown or what? Just the name of the color.
It's brown.
Okay. Okay. Are there? My notes are up to date. Are there other questions?
Could you go to the page where you have the two side by side? I think it's page 9, maybe. It just looks different. I thought I had the updated one.
I don't know why these outside windows are showing like that.
That's why I was okay. That's why I was asking. I know that sometimes PDF and the line weights. That was my.
I honestly never use Microsoft PowerPoint. I have it open and should have just used this.
Just because they were the.
It's supposed to look like this, so forgive the.
Okay. That was my question. It just looked different from the one on my screen. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious. You're suggesting that you clad these wood windows, but for the most part, this is an old tenement, and it is required that they be wood. And the reason why we should make an exception is because, why?
I mean, they're easier to maintain, and you have to paint them less, and so they'll maintain their character without as much upkeep. And additionally, since it's such a tall building, you don't really see these small details from the street level. They're all above commercial space.
Well, I beg to differ, but that's okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Doris, did you have a question? All right, does not appear to be any other questions.
Okay, we'll move on. Grand Street is on the list if any public members are here. It's scheduled for next Monday evening at 5 o'clock. We'll now have 600 Broadway. The application is to install signage at the primary Broadway facade and modify the infill at the rear Crosby Street facade.
All right, I promoted Julie Rosen.
Sorry, I was muted. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Good, thanks. Is there anyone else we need to add for this one, Julie?
Yes, if you could please add Joseph Mayhew, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, I'll go ahead and get my screen shared. All right, can you all see my screen now? Great.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Just going to get situated quickly and then we will move forward. All right, and we have Joseph as well. He was able to make it in.
Hello.
Great. Hi, Joe. How are you? Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. Good evening. I'm Julie Rosen from Higgins Queesbarth and Partners. Jumping right in to our project at 600 Broadway. The building is a 6-story store and loft building that runs through block from Broadway to Crosby Street, just south of Houston in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. The middle image shows the Broadway facade, which is the primary facade and contains the retail entry at the ground floor, right down here. The right image is of Crosby Street, which contains service functions at the ground floor. Target has recently leased the ground floor retail space and will be undertaking repair and restoration work at both the Broadway and Crosby Street facades, as well as introducing signage on Broadway and a bay of new infill on Crosby Street. The full scope of work is shown here on the slides so that you can see what the full project entails, but there are only 2 specific items that actually require commission level review. An illuminated bullseye sign at the retail entry on Broadway, and the installation of an additional service store on Crosby Street. Here we have a couple of existing photos of the Broadway retail frontage, just a detailed view of the historic sign band where new signage meeting staff level rules will be installed. A couple of existing photos of the, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm fumbling over myself. Let's see, the retail entry doors here, we have the transom above the doors. This is where the bullseye signage will be installed. And just a few existing photos of Crosby Street. Again, this is the service frontage. It contains historic metal shutters at one bay and vault light steps, both of which will be repaired and restored. Additional detailed photos of the southernmost bay here, which is currently a display window. This will become the new service door. The existing infill and bulkhead grille are not historic, but the historic cast iron sill, shown in the center photo there, will be salvaged and incorporated into the new door design. The photo at right shows the existing metal shutters, and the new service door will match this historic paneling. Retailers in Soho historically advertise their goods with a variety of signage types. This photo from 1890 shows the bracket and panel signs that were historically on 600 Broadway. And this 1937 view, looking down Broadway from Houston, reinforces the amount of signage that was historically on the thoroughfare, as well as the importance of visible signage. 600 Broadway is at the near left with the wall advertisement. As early as the 1930s, there was a clear distinction between the primary facade of 600 Broadway, with its design facade and variety of signage, and the building's simpler rear facade on Crosby. This distinction between primary and secondary facades remains today. Within the last several years, LPC has approved a variety of illuminated signs along Broadway, and we've provided a selection of past approvals for your reference. Service doors are a unique typology within the Soho Cast Iron Historic District, and buildings currently feature a variety of door designs and proportions, sometimes even several within one frontage. It's also quite common for buildings to contain more than one service entry, especially on the rear facades of buildings that run through block from Broadway. Here are 4 examples on Crosby Street alone. A quick summary slide to show you the location of our Broadway scope, and moving into an existing view and proposed rendering, which shows the new signage at Broadway, all located to the storefront area. And it consists of signage applied at the sign band and signage at the transom. The signage scope overall is modestly scaled in comparison to the size of the building, and it's quite consistent with other signage previously approved by LPC. Here's another view showing the proposed signage in context. Just to clarify, the only illuminated signage is the bullseye, and that's also the only signage under commission level review. Showing you the full signage scope in context though, the signage again is intimately scaled, and the bullseye located directly above the entry doors is primarily there for wayfinding. A couple of details here as well. The bullseye will be internally illuminated. It fits comfortably within the transom window. The sign will be mounted on metal tubes, which you can see here, which will actually conceal the conduit, and they'll be painted to match the storefront infill, so they'll basically disappear. The tubes will then be attached to the wood storefront infill so that none of the cast iron is penetrated or damaged in any way. Moving on to the Crosby Street scope, again, locating you to the new service door. We have an existing view on the left and proposed rendering on the right. The new service door will be installed at the southernmost bay. So southernmost bay of the existing, southernmost bay of the proposed. The new doors will be metal, and they'll have a panel design that matches the historic metal shutters. They're kind of hard to see here, but the historic shutters are at the northernmost bay. All other work that you see here, including the restoration of the existing stairs, will actually be reviewed at staff level. Just providing you with overall elevations and plans for your reference. We have the existing service door again at the north end of the building. That actually services the floors above, the office floors above. Target needs loading access as well, which is why they're proposing a new service door to be located at the southernmost bay. It will be installed at the same plane as the existing display window to keep consistency within the infill that's currently there. Access requirements also necessitate that the new door is slightly taller than the existing, but the design of the new doors will be paneled so that there's consistency in the treatment of all service doors at this facade. And again, the presence of 2 service doors, the difference in height, and the panel design are all very much in keeping with precedents throughout the district. Here's a quick overall view again before we jump into a nice detail here. Quick existing versus proposed elevation of this single bay that's under commission level review. The design team has taken an incredibly thoughtful approach to how the new doors are actually installed. So the existing wood window frame is going to remain in place and be modified to accommodate the door. And the bulkhead, which is composed of non-historic infill and a non-historic grille, that will be completely removed. But to prevent the loss of any historic fabric, the existing cast iron sill will actually be salvaged and relocated to above the door to serve as a new lintel. And here we have just a couple sheets of additional details of the new service doors. I'm happy to come back to these if you have any questions. I'm going to flip through. And then a final summary of the proposed work. Just a final, reminder to bring this all together. The commission will be reviewing the illuminated bullseye over the entry doors and the installation of the new service door on Crosby. Again, we think this is an incredibly respectful and modest proposal for this building. We hope you agree, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, could you put up the rendering of the Broadway entrance and then increase the size so that fills the screen?
Sure.
So we can see the sign better.
Mm-hmm. Oops, too far.
Excellent.
Is that okay? Okay, excellent.
And we need to know about the dimensions. It's obviously red, as I guessed from the client. What are the dimensions of the bullseye and the words together?
Sure. So the dimensions of the bullseye sign, it's 2 foot 6 inches in diameter, and the sign itself is only 3 inches deep. And I'm sorry,
and the area of the sign over the on the sign band.
At the sign band, so it meets staff level rules. So the letters are just under 18 inches tall. And they will be applied with adhesive, so there's no penetration of the cast iron, again, meeting staff level rules.
And no illumination, obviously.
And no illumination, correct.
Okay.
The only illuminated sign is the bullseye.
Let's see. Just how high are the doors on Crosby Street?
Oh, on Crosby Street?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just flip. I believe they're about 8 feet tall, but let me just check so that we make sure we're getting you the right information. They are 8 feet tall.
And fill the
I'm sorry?
opening. And they fill the opening.
Correct. They fill the width of the opening, exactly.
And would you, stay blown up where you were.
Oh, sure.
I didn't quite understand what parts are being removed and moved up. What parts of the cast iron?
Let me just switch slides really quick. This is a better one to look at.
Okay.
So this sill piece right here, this is actually cast iron. So that will be.
Oh, it's a sill. Okay.
It's a sill. Yeah. So
I was looking at the sods because they're more detailed and interesting. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
The columns all remain in place. Just that sill piece is going to come out as one unit and be lifted up.
Okay. Questions from the committee?
Eugene Eugene has a question, and then we do have a question from someone in the public.
Sure.
Sure. I just had a quick question. I think Albert also has his hand.
Thanks,
Valerie. So a quick question just on the service door on Crosby. So that will be for, I guess, specific loading of inventory into Target. Is there an existing curb cut, or are you going to require a curb cut for that, or? It's Crosby. I think Crosby has it's very cobblestone. So I don't know how that's going to affect the sidewalk in front of it.
Maybe Joe, you might be able to speak to that.
That's not really part of our concern here.
It is outside the scope. But
yeah.
Any of that work that's required, we'll be working with staff on.
All right. Thanks, Eugene. Albert, did you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Great.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Okay. In the transom where the logo is, what is the width of the window as compared to the width of the apple of the logo?
That is a good question. Unfortunately, we actually don't have the transom window dimensions labeled on here. That is something that we will make sure we add. But as you can see here from the blow up, the bullseye is much smaller than the width of the transom, and the diameter of the bullseye is 2'6". So the window itself is likely another foot larger than that.
I do believe the doors are 5 feet wide. So the window is about 5 feet wide.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions that?
I have, for the record, a written comment from the member of the public opposing illuminated signs on Broadway.
All right. Just making sure, just scrolling through to see if anyone else is waving their hand that doesn't normally use the raise function. So now I will go to Laura Tenenbaum from the public. Laura, you're live.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. I want to talk about two things, both the opposition to the illuminated bullseye, have absolutely no problem with the other signage on the Broadway side or on the Crosby side, but also about the size of the service door on Crosby. But before I do that, and I know it's kind of outside scope, but you guys are on the community board, and it's a reminder I want to give always about buildings like this. When I chaired the Land Use Committee of Community Board 2, there had been a complete wholesale stationery store on that ground floor. Suddenly, it turned into a retail store. Absolutely no city planning, nothing involved, but suddenly buildings department said, we have no proof it was ever stationary. It had been a stationery store for years after the Soho zoning was passed. I just want to say
ma'am,
another one.
This is,
but I'm going on to the
ma'am, this is not a concern of what is before us.
However,
here.
you are on the community board, and as members of the community board, I think you should know that. Nothing to do. You should not put it in your resolution, but as members of the community board, I think you should know that. Going further to what is at hand, this neighborhood has always been opposed to any illuminated signage. It used to was never decided on staff level. I know that there were some precedents that the applicants have shown you. Crate and Barrel is not within the Soho Cast Iron Historic District. The cores, I know, slipped through your fingers. You had so many, so many issues when you were deciding that you just didn't notice that it was illuminated, and it's kind of moot because they're gone now. Illuminated signage is a real problem in our community. It's very similar to any other neighborhood where people live. It disturbs us at night. I wish that it didn't, but it does. And also, to be honest, I think it's quite unsightly from my own perspective. Not illuminated, fine, but any kind of illumination, I'm entirely opposed to, and I know most of this community is. As to the service door on Crosby Street, I just question why they need an 8-foot tall door. I think that the movement of the transom is what they're doing in terms of moving the lintel or whatever it is up higher is great, but I don't understand why it has to be off, because the other door is not 8 feet. The other door is shorter, so it's always going to be unbalanced. And as I did say, it's typical within Soho to have balanced and unbalanced, but that's because the buildings have been cut into. These were all things that were done not under the aegis of landmarks. So this is being done under the aegis of landmarks, and I think that it should be better balanced than it is. I don't see why it can't be the same height as the existing door. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Madam Presenter, I'm sorry, who is this?
Julie.
Yes, you gave some examples of illuminated signs in the district. Can you identify that they were done with the approval of the commission rather than done prior to designation?
The illuminated signage was all approved by the commission.
Okay. Thank you. Are there other questions about this application?
I have a quick question. What is the height of the service doors to the north? Did you hear me, Julie?
Yep, sorry, hi, yep. Sorry, my computer froze for a minute. Let me double check if we have that dimension.
I don't think it's on the drawings, actually.
We did not dimension it. Joe, do you happen to know from your surveying how tall that door is?
Yes, we did survey it. It's less than 7 feet. It's like about 6'8" or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Does that exhaust questions for this application?
It looks like it.
Okay.
All right. So I
Okay,
think
if you'll rearrange, I'll read.
One. Yep, I'm gonna.
7276 West 11th Street. The application is to reconstruct and alter the street wall.
Oops. All right, 1 second. Oops.
I'm going to work this to remove the word street wall because that habitually refers to the wall of a building rather than the thing, and then put the name of the cemetery in.
All right, Rachel Frankel, you should be promoted to panelist now, and you should be able to share your screen when you're ready.
Can you see me? Hello?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Great. Rachel Frankel. We've been retained by Congregation Cherith Israel to prepare this proposal for the conservation of the cemetery. And what we are calling the street wall, even though it's not the wall of a building, is what will be reviewed by the commissioners. So first, for some history, by 1800, Congregation Cherith Israel found itself in need of additional burial ground, not only for the growing Jewish population, but in consideration of the possibility of a pandemic that might prevent use of the well-established Chatham Square Cemetery. Shortly thereafter, in 1804, the trustees of the congregation purchased 2 adjacent lots, each roughly 25 feet wide by 100 feet long on the south side.
I'm sorry, just a moment. We're having trouble with your screen. Valerie, can you mute Doris? She seems to be cutting in.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I'll
continue. I'm sorry.
Sure. Thank you.
We just want to see you.
Okay, thank you. The following year, the ground was dedicated as Bet Chaim Sheni, Second Cemetery. And shortly thereafter, the sole grave of Wolf Pollock, a victim of yellow fever, was transferred to it from the very short-lived 13th Street Cemetery. With that interment, the cemetery became supplemental to the old graveyard at Chatham Square. At first, the cemetery primarily received strangers and newcomers who had neither family ties nor sentimental attachment to Chatham Square. But by 1823, when the city issued an ordinance forbidding burial south of Canal Street, Bet Chaim Sheni became the only active burial ground of the community. By 1830, the city would open and extend 11th Street through a portion of the cemetery. The result would leave a fragmentary triangle of burial ground, and those graves that laid outside of it were transposed into it. Newly extended 11th Street was built at a higher elevation than the residual cemetery, thus necessitating the augmentation of earth to bring the cemetery's level up to it, thereby making extant graves unusually deep. In late 1830, as 11th Street came barreling west, the congregation retained A.P. Maber to construct a stone foundation and brick wall around the now triangular cemetery fronting on 11th Street. Those walls, utilitarian in design and hastily constructed, have been altered and repaired over time, yet stand today. You can see the fence in front of the wall. This is a wooden fence, and behind it is the wall.
Rachel, are you sharing? I don't believe anyone else can see your screen.
Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness. Okay.
I didn't know if we're doing some sort of introduction, but then you started referring.
Yeah, okay.
You should be able to get the green share.
Can you see it now?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, so thank you. I'm going to just go back then. This is what I started with, Greenwich Village Historic District. This is a photograph of the street wall from last year. This shows you this triangular bit that's left. West Street, it's a fascinating part of New York City history because we see the old Greenwich Village grid meeting the new New York City grid. So that's what this is about. And I'm so sorry about the screen share thing. Okay. And then this goes into detail about those interred being moved to the remnant gore, the earth having to come up to meet the new sidewalk. Some more drawings that speak to that. And then I think this is where you caught me, so thank you. This is the wooden fence behind which is the brick wall, one of the three I'm speaking about. And I just did a little zoom so you could see a little bit of the brick here. This photograph is from 1898. The one below here is from 2005. Some more photographs. This one on the top from about 100 years ago. And we see first evidence of the stucco. And this is the 1980 tax lot photograph. In 2015, all the walls were probed. We did this. We've been working on this project for 5 years. At the street wall, 2 test pits revealed that the brick wall extends down about 1 foot below the sidewalk and rests on a stone foundation wall that continues down beyond the 5-foot depth of the test pit that we made. The 1 foot of brick wall below grade was found to be in poor condition with loose brick and heavily deteriorated mortar. The brick wall above grade, which has been covered by a cementous coating, is soft due to the freezing and thawing of water trapped between it and the cementous coating. The vehicular accident of 2019 further compromised the wall. The interior walls are in better condition. For the interior walls, per our structural engineer's recommendation, we propose repair. For the street wall, our structural engineer recommends dismantling the brick portion above the stone foundation and then partially exposing the stone foundation to examine it for soundness. Where necessary, voids in the stone foundation will be filled. Afterwards, our proposed new brick wall will be constructed on the existing stone foundation. At the American elm tree, we propose curving away from it to accommodate it. According to our arborist, this American elm tree, a volunteer, not intentionally planted, is not only rare in its resistance to Dutch elm disease, but has been growing vigorously. It now arches out considerably over 11th Street. The base of the trunk comes within 1 inch of the capstone of the existing wall. While it does not appear that its roots are at present causing any bowing or deformation of the wall, As it continues to grow, the tree will begin to impact the capstone of the wall and eventually grow into the wall. The roots could cause some instability in the stone foundation. These are existing condition elevations of the three walls, the back wall, the side wall, the street wall from the inside, and the street wall from the outside, and this represents the impact of the vehicle. Our proposed curve, which is right here around the tree, our proposed curve will allow the ever-growing tree and the cemetery to continue to coexist. We intend to restore and reinstall the historic iron fencing and gate. New matching ironwork is proposed at the new curve in the wall, and a portion of masonry is proposed at the end of the wall to bracket the curve, which is here. And that's it. This is the arborist report at the end, should anyone wish to look at it. Any questions?
Could you go back, please, to the plan of the
Yes.
bump? Yes. How far does it vary?
How far does it project to the street?
Well, how far is the I guess it's the.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
The maximum dimension of the triangle.
Oh,
I'm trying.
The street wall is about 75 feet. This wall is about 75 feet.
Right, and how much is what is roughly the amount of the bump out?
Of what we call the curve, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, good question. Let's see, we have a dimension.
It's just a question of how much intrudes on the sidewalk.
Yeah, I don't have a dimension there, I'm sorry, but I can tell you between the piers, we have about 9 feet, and you can see that it's less than 9 feet. So it's probably, I'm going to say about 6 feet of width. And
6 feet wide, and it comes out then
and it projects,
a foot.
And it projects out about, well, no.
It's how far it projects from the current wall line toward the street.
At most, at the extreme spot, it will be 2 feet.
Okay, the approximation is fine.
And I should add those. I should add those dimensions if I can. Thank you.
If there's no questions from the committee,
I have a question.
Okay.
I have a question.
Thanks, Anita.
Could you talk a little bit about these piers? I don't know if they are existing or new.
Sure. So there are existing piers. Let me just center this for us. So on the inside of the street wall, there are these piers, and they are 4 wides thick, so they project out a few inches only, and we will be recreating them. We will be recreating them.
They have an existing foundation underneath them already?
We only probed 5 years ago. We probed only from the outside because, of course, inside is so sensitive because we have burials. We think they're pretty far down, but so we've not made any probes on the inside to know what the foundation condition is underneath those piers. We only know what the foundation condition is like from the street side.
And it's a rubble foundation, that's correct? A rubble?
It's a stone rubble. Yeah, so it's this very, you see, we've never seen the bottom of it. It's so deep. Maybe I should go back to the section. We did 5-foot deep test pits, and we couldn't see the bottom of the wall.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, and the elevations of the cemetery remains the same?
What do you mean by that?
Well, it took me a little while, but I think I figured it out. In other words, it was designed with one thing in mind, from the height of the elevations, and it was built where the existing grade is at 24 feet on the cemetery side. So the grass and the earth and everything remains as is, elevation wise.
You mean what's inside the cemetery,
Yeah.
the burial ground? That part of the submission is not being reviewed at the public hearing. It's just the street wall, but I'm happy to talk about it. But I don't
Okay,
know if you
yeah,
want to take
fine.
the time now to listen to that. It's
Briefly,
fascinating.
please.
Okay, so about 100 years ago, there was a discussion about, do we sell this little triangle to the skyscraper going up next door, or do we keep it? And the decision was to keep it and to do some minor restoration work then. And at that time, I think many of the marble stones were taken and fixed to the two interior walls. It's never a good idea. Good intention, but not a good idea. So all of those markers that are mounted on the walls which we're going to repair, we're taking them down, and you can see in our plan drawing, oops, we're taking them off the wall and we're setting them in a bed or offsetting them from the wall. It will protect the wall and it will protect the markers. Over the last few years, we have done some protection of some of the markers that were getting ready to fall down and break in two. And the path is presently a brick path that's kind of not so nice to walk along. And we are recreating a path within the cemetery.
And you're keeping the elevation the same. That's really my question. Are you raising it or dropping it? That's all.
When you say elevation, do you mean the height of the wall, the new street wall?
No, forget the wall, the actual cemetery, the grass.
Oh, no. We consider that sacred ground because we don't really know
that's
where
what I
burials
thought.
are. So we're not
All
doing
right.
any probing. And we have roots, the two yew trees and the elm, there are roots all over. If you looked at the, do we have it?
It's okay. We understand that it's
Okay.
that it's just
Okay. So no.
Thank
We're
you.
not doing anything.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got
There's
it.
Just,
Thank you.
I've just one question from my notes. Of the brick that's rebuilding, I assume is similar to the brick you found behind the.
So the existing brick wall. Let's look at the picture.
It's a question of the new material.
Right. So we are going to, much to our delight, we discovered that behind the stucco wall, the face brick of the wall is actually pretty nice stuff. Seems so, at least at this portion. And we would hope to be able to salvage as much of the brick as possible and use it in our new wall.
Okay.
The existing wall you can see is an English garden wall, kind of an everyday English garden wall, and that you have 5 stretchers for each row of headers. I think we might do something more headers, which makes it sort of a nicer wall. Maybe 3 rows of stretchers to 1 row of header, and a proper mortar job. These walls have been patched over so many times and they really look awful. And we're also going to put on new brownstone cap, whether it's a brownstone or a cast stone, whether it's a Chinese brownstone or a German cast stone. I think we'll be working that out with staff once the project's approved, hopefully by the commissioners.
Okay, thank you. Valerie, I have Mr. Wise would like to speak.
Right, we do have a question from another board member.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Michael Levine.
Hi, thank you very much for this presentation. This is an extraordinarily important landmark in our community and a neighbor of where I live. I have a question about the wall. The brick wall is quite high and the fence above it is really quite minimal. Many passers-by have difficulty trying to look into the cemetery to understand what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And this question really is about how you are planning the reconstruction. Will the brick wall be the new brick wall be the exact same height as the old one? And will the fence be the same as the old? Or could there be a variation in which the new brick wall is lower and the fence taking up a little bit more space so that passersby can have a better view of what's happening inside the cemetery?
Yeah, I really appreciate your question, and we explored that. Let's look at the elevation. Visitors will be able to stand here as opposed to this tiny little 30-inch width. They'll be able to stand here and look in. And no matter how short or little you are, if you're even sitting in a stroller or in a wheelchair, you will be able to see in. And because this is about 6 feet and it's bowed, you'll get more of a view into it. The congregation did not want to lower the wall for security purposes. It's been a real problem over the years.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Right, I'm going to allow Nathaniel.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a neighbor on the same block at the other end at 15 West 11th, and I just wanted to speak in support of this proposal. I've been part of a committee at Cherith Israel who've treated me and another person from the block as equal members of the committee. We were part of the decision to retain Rachel Frankel for this project. She's an expert on New World Jewish cemeteries in the Caribbean, and it's a gem of Greenwich Village in downtown, a witness to the imposition of the street grid. I've held the parchment in my hand where the city took the parts of 11th Street by eminent domain in order to build 11th Street, and I've been really moved by the cooperation of the congregation. And even though they're way up at 70th and Central Park West, they take this very seriously. And we've been working on this for years, and I'm excited that we're making this progress. I had friends who thought that I arranged for the car to bash into the wall as a way of accelerating the project. And I want to say that that's not true. But we've been planning this restoration for many years, and we've done fundraising about it, and we're planning to do more. And we really appreciate your support. And I'm also really glad that we're saving the elm tree, because that was a big point of discussion also.
Thank you. I see that, Barbara, did you want to speak? Oh, let me see. There we go.
Okay. Can you hear me actually?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, just very briefly, I'm Barbara Rice. I'm the Executive Director of Congregation Cherith Israel. And I really just want to express a couple of things. One is that, as Nathaniel just said, our congregation is based on the Upper West Side and Central Park West and 70th Street, but we take very much seriously and very much love our historic cemeteries in Manhattan, including this one on West 11th Street. And at the same time, we're quite challenged sometimes at the historic responsibility that goes with financial responsibilities for maintaining it as best as we can. At the end of the day, we are a synagogue congregation with all the usual responsibilities that synagogues and struggles that synagogues have. We are incredibly grateful to the cooperative spirit and dedication of the Block Association. Nathaniel has been active for all these years, as well as some other members of the West 11th Street Block Association. Rachel, who this is her life work. And I also want to express appreciation to this community board for taking the time and seriousness to look at this project. And just look forward to getting to know you all better, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara.
I can say a personal note. I have a good friend who lived nearby and has lately moved to a retirement home far away. And she asked me at least every month about this. cemetery and if it's being cared for properly. And I'm so happy to be able to report.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a
Great.
beloved piece of New York City.
Thank you, Barbara, again. Next, we have Brian Pape from the committee has a question.
Yes, thank you. I just happened to go by there just the other day and took some photographs and noticed the condition of the graveyard. I also noticed that there's some large vines at the very west end, extreme corner. How is that kind of growth being handled?
Yeah, so we, for a little cemetery, this is a big team. And we have a landscape architect, and she has made a proposal for removing the vines. There's a whole, it's a whole Talmudic discussion really about vines and walls, but we side with the no vines on walls. That's our camp. Some aspects of the project are going to, as I understand it, depend on fundraising, and some of the landscaping will depend on fundraising as well. However, in order to repair the walls, we have to remove, and we will be removing any kinds of vines or ivy, and we have very careful specifications for how we do that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next application is 770 Broadway to establish a master plan governing the future installation of storefront, infill, and signage.
Great. So I believe that's also Julie again. Is there anyone else, Julie, we need to add in?
Yes, if you could please add William Jenkins and Kenneth Drucker.
All right.
Excellent. I'm just going to pull up the presentation. Let's see. Can you see that okay?
Looks great.
Excellent. All right. Perfect. Hello again, everyone. Just for the record, I'm Julie Rosen from Higgins Quays Barth & Partners. 770 Broadway is a 15-story store and loft building in the NoHo Historic District. The building is located on the full block, which you can see here on the block plan, district plan. It's bounded by Broadway on the west, Wanamaker Place on the north, Lafayette Street on the east, and East 8th Street on the south. So you're going to see a lot of elevations referenced in the proposal, so hopefully that was a good introduction to location. The proposal before you, as Chanel mentioned, I believe, is for the establishment of a storefront and signage master plan at the base of the building. The next several pages will just take you on a quick tour around the base of the building. This is a very large building with a lot of retail frontage, and the retail spaces really ground the building with their two-story articulation. But a number of different retail tenants occupy the ground floor, and each tenant space currently contains different infill. There are specific locations of the building that are not part of the master plan, so I just want to identify those now. It includes the main entrance on Wanamaker Place, that's the north elevation. Quickly moving through the building. And at the south elevation, that's kind of the service facade, so the loading bays are also omitted from the master plan. As I mentioned, there's quite a variety of existing tenant infill at the building, much of which has really existed for decades, and it significantly obscures visibility into the retail spaces. So the goal of the storefront master plan is to unify all of the ground floor infill and really return a sense of openness to the base of the building. The new infill will be painted metal, and it will be based on a traditional storefront composition with substantial bulkhead, display window, and transom. These views of the Broadway facade speak to the idea that the master plan will keep the infill on the primary thoroughfares, Broadway and Lafayette, free of louvers. I'll also mention quickly that there is some non-historic fluting at piers on Broadway and around the corner. Those will also be removed as part of this application. Now looking at the Lafayette Street frontage, the corner tenant currently has their entry infill recessed. The master plan will actually ensure that all of the new infill is constructed at the street wall. The proposed storefronts may also look familiar to all of you. The design is actually based on a recent commission approval for single tenant work at Wanamaker Place. From historic documentation, we know that the storefronts were designed as double height spaces. And the historic storefront certainly served as inspiration for the new storefront design, but as you'll see a little bit later, the proportions have been slightly adapted to fit existing conditions. By the time the building was designated as a landmark, as shown in the photo on the left, the historic infill had all been removed and non-contextual storefronts had been installed. A tenant application shown on the right, which was reviewed by the commission last year and by this committee as well, proposed to install new contemporary yet contextual infill. Our current proposal uses this design as a basis. A number of existing conditions have been somewhat inherited as part of this project. This slide summarizes the variety of existing infill at the ground floor. It's composed of glazed display windows and entry bays that are completely infilled, and then louvers and egress doors. So the challenge of this project was that we had to take all of these disparate existing conditions and use requirements and create a cohesive plan. Existing conditions at the interior also necessitated creative thinking. While the entire ground floor was originally designed as a double height space, the interior layout has changed quite a bit over the years. So at the west end of the building, which is highlighted in green on the floor plan, a mezzanine was added decades ago to create additional office space. The office space can be seen in photo 2, and this is still in use. The floors are still occupied. The section at the left shows how the ground floor retail space is actually separated from the second floor office space by this full slab set immediately behind the existing storefront infill. Now with the east side, which is highlighted in blue on the plan, this actually retains the original double height space. And photo 3 down here shows the interior of this space. And you wouldn't know it from looking at the photo, but this is actually looking towards an exterior wall where a display window has been infilled. This is a very consistent condition at this portion of the building. So just to complicate things a little further, at some point a structural beam was also installed halfway through this double height retail space, and it was also set immediately behind the existing storefront infill. And this beam is integral with the exterior facade structure and it can't be removed. So taking all of this into consideration, the new storefront design necessarily incorporates a strategy for hiding the west slab and the east beam. The team surveyed all of the existing infill and the associated structural, egress, and HVAC requirements in preparation for developing this master plan scope. And existing conditions at the north elevation are shown here. I'll just move quickly through just again to familiarize all of you with the existing conditions. On the east elevation, it shows that the ground floor retail windows are almost entirely filled with solid panels. At the south elevation, you see largely service and egress uses here. And at the west elevation, you kind of have a mix of some infilled and some glazed retail windows. Here's where we really get into the meat of our proposal. So as you see, we have an existing elevation on top, proposed on the bottom. The master plan storefront proposal has been so streamlined that there are actually only 2 typical infill types. We have a display window bay and an entrance bay with or without louvers. So in this instance, the proposed really does give you a good indication of what the final product will look like. The bays all have a band of spandrel glass that runs between the lower and upper windows. This creates consistency throughout the storefront infill and hides, again, either that second floor slab at the west side of the building or the structural beam at the east side. Louvers at typical bays will only be located at the second floor or transom windows to continue that visibility into the ground floor. And they have also been isolated to the north and south facades. There's been a very, very careful attention paid to where louvers are located on this building. So as you can see here on the east and west facades, this is specifically the east elevation, which are one of the major commercial. This will have fully glazed infill that's clear of louvers. There are a couple of existing egress bays. You have them in the center of the facade here. That will contain infill that's slightly different, and I'll just go into more detail later. But the goal is that even specific egress space still fit within those established proportions and design intentions of the rest of the design. Again, here you'll see that louvers are concentrated at the south facade with certain kind of localized glazing and louver installations at certain bays. And at the west elevation, again, a ground floor clear of louvers. Signage will also be very modest on the building. It consists of pin-mounted signage that will be installed in main retail entries only. And this page and the next contain building plans that summarize the organization of the new infill that you saw on the previous sheets. So here you see the ground floor. The green color indicates clear glazing, blue indicates louvers, and orange indicates egress or entry bays. And the bays marked with blue or orange are the only locations that deviate from the two typical infill types. And there are very few of these considering the size of the building. As you can also see, the corners also remain fully glazed to really retain that transparency and consistency of the infill at the ground floor. At the second floor, the transparency at the corners and east and west facades is also retained and really reinforced here, with louvers again located at the north and south only. The remainder of the presentation largely consists of details for what you've just seen, so I'll try and run through those a little bit more quickly, and then I'm happy to return to any of these if you have questions. So big picture, the goal of the storefront master plan is to turn a somewhat disjointed and closed up ground floor into one that's more transparent and one that's more closely aligned with the original design intent. The typical bays, the majority of the new infill will have clear glazing with spandrel glazing, limited to areas that coincide with the location of the second floor slab or structural beam. So at left, you have a typical display window. The goal is for the glass to read as pretty much continuous from the bulkhead all the way up to this thick horizontal mullion, giving the effect that there's a large display window with a transom above it. But in order to achieve this, the spandrel glass will actually be butt glazed, meaning that there will be a very thin joint right in between the clear glass and the spandrel glass. The goal is that on this very large scale of these storefront bays, that this joint will really not be very perceptible at all. And at right, we have a typical entrance bay. So all of the entry doors will be double doors, and at the main entries only, you'll have stainless steel pin-mounted signage. And the signage will sit on a small support bracket that's offset 6 inches from the glass. All of the infill will be painted green, which actually matches the historic color and actually matches the approved infill that you reviewed last year. So just a quick summary of the 4 typical infill types. The majority of the infill will look like type A and type B, and then type C and D are just the typical louver options that kind of coincide with A and B. So it's a very, very streamlined proposal. Just a few typical details for the different portions of the infill. These details do match those previously reviewed by you and approved by the commission. And the only difference in this proposal is really the integration of that spandrel glass into those large display window bays. So a couple of photos here again showing you the slight difference between the spandrel glazing on the left and the vision glazing on the right, as well as the green that the storefront infill will be painted. And we have a lot of details for you. I'm just going to flip through these quickly. Again, these are just showing, again, that summary type page that I just showed you, but now just with some section details showing how the infill will relate to, again, those second floor slabs and structural beams.
Remember that number. I want to come back to it.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And then, as I mentioned earlier, we have certain kind of one-off infill types that directly relate to special egress or other HVAC regulations. So we just wanted to show you those quickly as well. These bays, again, are localized to specific locations on the building. These are not interchangeable types. And so we have this little key plan in the upper right-hand corner where it shows you what this type looks like and then where it's going on the building. So the types, as I flip through, you'll see kind of incorporate spandrel glazing, clear glazing, and louvers in unique compositions that again only happen at these specific locations. We have a lot of details, so I apologize. I'm just going to flip through. I'm happy to come back to these, but I wanted to make it here just to show you some of the signage details. Again, just to show you what the signage looks like. Again, it's stainless steel pin-mounted letters on this little support bracket, and that's actually anchored right into that butt glazed joint for a very, very streamlined, very clean appearance. And just a final project slide as summary for the proposed storefront master plan and signage scope, again with the goal of reincorporating transparency and openness to the ground floor. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, how tall are the letters?
The letters are 1 foot. I'll just zoom in right there. The letters are 1 foot tall.
And if you could go back to that, it's the window, the typical window that obscures the top in a certain way.
You're talking about typical type A?
It's there. Oh, sorry.
This one's a little easier to understand, sure.
The next, I think it's the one after this.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Type AB, type C and D.
Sure.
What are we seeing? I'm not clear what we see behind there.
Sure. Yeah. It helps to zoom in a little bit.
Yeah. Yes. Also good.
Is this a little clear? So you have your bulkhead, your clear glazing, your spandrel glazing, and then these are showing the louvers at the second floor.
Is it? So that's just the louvers. Okay.
It's just the louver. Yep. That's
Okay.
the only difference for type C and D.
I've incorporated. And how do you describe the spandrel glass?
So the spandrel glass, yeah, so that's a really good question. So the spandrel glass, it's very similar to the clear glass, but it has—
I just want a name for it.
Fritting behind it so that it's a little bit opaque. So you still get some light transfer through it, but it's not transparent.
So it's semi-opaque.
It's semi-opaque, exactly.
Okay. From the committee, please.
I have a question. Julie, very unusual to have two treatments of glass butted up against each other. And I'm just wondering, I mean, I can imagine the reflection sort of making it all look good, but are you at all concerned that you're changing a surface and butting it up without any separation or frame, or, that's historic. This is non-historic solution to the design problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good question. So there was a lot of research and design work done by the architects with really the goal of wanting to make sure that this expanse from bulkhead to mullion was as kind of clean and contained as little interruption as possible. Again, the goal, and we worked very closely with Landmarks on this as well, was to have this new design relate very closely to what was previously approved. The previously approved design had this very clear mullion going across. So the way that the architects devised this so that we do have this, uninterrupted look of glass is that it's going to be butt glazed, and maybe I'll just zoom into this detail here. So there will be a very, very thin piece of metal that marks that transition where the butt glazed joint is. So you will see a very, very slight separation between the two, and it will be, completely structurally glazed. It will have all the right attachments. But because the fritting for the spandrel glass is on the back, you'll still get that very clean line of the glazing at the front surface.
Thank you.
If there's not any other questions from the committee, I believe Michael Levine has a question.
Yes, thank you. I have a quick question about the loading bays. You said they're not included in the master plan, which I understand because they're not retail at the present time, but they do take up a substantial portion of the 8th Street frontage. And I'm just wondering, given the changes of retail use in this building and large-scale retail uses in general, if at some point in the future those loading bays disappear and some of the spaces they occupy become retail space, do you have any idea, or would you include it in this plan, of how you might extend the master plan to include the spaces currently occupied by the loading bays, or is that far beyond the scope of your project?
It's currently far beyond the scope of this project. The loading bays are anticipated to remain loading for the foreseeable future.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions from the committee or from the board? All right, seeing none. Chenault? Thank you, Julie.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. No, oh, I thought you were the one that had a question. Thank you. Yes. Goodbye. Okay, shall we start our resolutions? If we could go back to Ninth Avenue. Michael, you're taking over somehow. Can you mute yourself or? Michael, can you turn off you're taking over the screen somehow?
He's muted.
Okay. Okay. Shall we? Oh, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong thing. It obscured my face.
I have no objection to this application. To the 9th Street with the 2 signs. Is that the one
Okay,
we're talking about?
Does anyone have comments?
Well, I would say, this is Brian Papin, I would say that's a pretty sensitive application of signage, and I would favor it. Thank you. By the way, just an aside, I just read an article about the Lucid electric cars, and the designer of the Lucid Air car is the engineer or designer behind the Tesla original Model S. And so he's well qualified, and it's pretty exciting to have their showroom there when there's a Tesla showroom nearby.
Okay, Sullivan Street, the ramp.
Oh.
There were a number of questions. I don't know what we do about anything. Yeah, Anita.
I'm not convinced that they've really evaluated the location of this properly I mean, these streets are so packed, and you've left now like a doorway between the tree. So I'm not sure why it wouldn't be moved a little closer to Bleecker Street, why it couldn't be. I know they don't want to give up their storefront, but I don't know. I'm not convinced this is the best solution.
I would suggest that we word it, provided that there are no conflicts with the sidewalk.
Well, there is a conflict with the sidewalk, but it's a matter of degree, I guess.
I think that it's a major flaw not to have a dimension of the sidewalk and what's left and all of that. We expect that. I know that on the Quality of Life Committee, we expect anybody that comes to us and they show all of the dimensions of all the obstructions and anything that would be involved. So that was a
disease tonight, missing dimensions.
In this case,
it will finally come down to how much space there is. So, sorry, Susan.
I would say that piece of information that Brian just referenced, it was an extremely conspicuous omission, and it's very hard to believe that it was accidentally omitted given the size of the sidewalk. And we did not get enough information on this one. I mean, the applicant was not able to provide sufficient information, I don't think.
Are we bold enough to deny it because we say that there's not enough space? If space is something we consider.
Well, we should certainly say that we feel that those dimensions need to be verified before we can approve it. I think.
Well, that becomes to be a deny unless.
Yes.
I see Albert has his hand up. You'll need to unmute Albert.
Albert?
I can't unmute him.
Okay, we'll move on and catch it at the next.
No, will you just confirm what the vote was for 2 Ninth Avenue? There's a question.
No one disapproved.
Great, thanks.
Christopher Street. Aluminum windows replacing wooden windows, and it goes back to 2/2 instead of 1/1.
The restoration of the windows is admirable.
Not being restored, they're replacing them. Albert.
But they are restoring them to the original.
To the original configuration, but not the original window material.
Okay.
Well, and I do agree with Albert that that is a significant improvement. Also, the detail of the profile is a significant improvement. Just having that extra step is much more in keeping with the original
great
wood
care.
Yeah. So I'm in favor.
Albert, while you're on, did you have a comment on Sullivan Street? I wasn't sure what you wanted to comment on.
Yes. They did not present us with enough detail, but it is obvious that the space that is left between the tree pit and the ramp is inadequate. Parents,
we all agree on that.
Parents with twins would not be able to get their stroller through there, and it would not be possible to make the tree pit any smaller.
Or me with a shopping bag.
Or so me with Hector.
Everybody agrees on all of that. Yeah.
It's an incomplete presentation.
Everyone agreed on the application.
Yeah. Are we back on Christopher Street?
Yes.
Okay, I am opposed to this because I think if Landmarks wanted us to replace them with clad, they should change the regulations. These tenement buildings are only now beginning to be restored, and there are many, many, many of them. And sending out this kind of precedent is not good, I think, from a community board level, because we're going to now, first of all, we're going to make everybody go and get an exception to the rule. Either Landmark should say, oh, okay, we accept it, or we should stick by it. I don't think wood windows look different than clad windows, by the way. And a beautifully restored facade does not look the same with a metal pan thing and right? Mustafa, it's true.
Oh, okay.
It's true.
Okay.
Huh? I can't hear you.
If it's done in wood.
Wood is fine. Wood is what they wouldn't have to come to us to do that, by the way.
Does anyone else object to asking that the metal be replaced with wood?
I would like to see that we ask that the metal be replaced with wood. I do not think that the justification of something of an incorrect material being used and justified by the rationale that it's quote unquote easier to maintain or that there's quote unquote less upkeep is anything that should have bearing on, that should sway us in favor of what we know to be a material that would be regrettable.
Even though at least he was honest and didn't try to say it would look the
I
same.
appreciate that, but
Yeah.
He did. He
it's
did
not-
say you couldn't tell. So
That's right.
you can tell. You
But
could.
then he
You
said
can tell.
You just have to look up.
Yeah.
But we
I can
do
spot a fiberglass
we do
of a
support
building anywhere, so I know about looking up.
we do support the configuration, the proposed configuration.
Right. Okay. So it's the design in wood rather than metal that we approve.
Yeah.
Grand Street we'll carry on about later. Okay. Unlike the application, let us deal with one facade at a time on Broadway. The Broadway sign, everybody's
Which
clear what it is.
Broadway? 600?
600, yeah.
The target.
The question before us is the bullseye sign illuminated.
It's too
We
big.
could approve it as it is. We could approve it without illumination, or we could not approve it. Those are sort of three choices.
I believe that it is too big for the space. It
Okay.
almost overwhelms it.
Okay. Other comments?
I will say that compared to whatever that bank thing was, this is like, you know, light years ahead better than what we saw as far as so I mean, I have to say, I think it was done relatively sensitively, and it's the illumination for me that's the problem. This is a huge building. I think it can hold a duck.
I expected it to be outrageous number of things, and I was very pleasantly surprised when I heard.
Yeah, it's pretty sensitively done, all things considered.
Does
Yes, and
is there
I
the
would agree.
bullseye?
Well, my question
I
is,
didn't hear other objections to the size.
yeah, my question is on the illuminated sign. Are there other options for lighting the sign besides being internally illuminated? Is there any way of lighting a store sign on Broadway that wouldn't be objectionable to the neighbors?
The general, just my memory, just in areas in general, that the halo signs are thought to be the most sensitive to the historic sensitivity of the building. And they don't glare as much as an internally illuminated one.
This property is also sticking into Houston Street. This is where there's a crick in the expansion of Houston Street. So this building is almost receiving all the traffic coming from the west. So it's not like in a canyon like some of the others are. So I just thought I'd point that out. I know this corner very well. But I think we should approve it without the illumination because it reflects the community's position, the neighbors.
Yeah, totally.
It's a hard one because of all the precedent of approved illuminated signs.
There's not that much though. Crate and Barrel is not in the Soho, and Coors is gone. And what was the other thing? Some ugly G-Star thing that probably never got.
It certainly is a cleaner resolution not to approve the illumination and
I
leave
think we
it.
have to.
And then if they want to bring back other illumination.
Yeah.
It's also a silhouette that's recognizable, so it can be done in that manner.
Listen, there's a lot of street light there. It'll get illuminated by the cars coming down Houston Street.
Okay, Crosby Street. The only objection that came up in the discussion was how high it is.
It'd be nice to have the matching door heights.
I agree, but it is really low for a building this size to have like a little mouse hole. So I don't,
6'8".
that's low in a massive commercial building like this.
Crosby's,
So I'm kind of,
Crosby's always this thing of,
huh? Can't hear you.
Yeah, well, until Chanel comes back. Yeah, I
I'm
noticed
here.
that even the 8-foot loading dock doors that they're proposing are smaller, shorter than the 2 sets of other doors above the vault lights. Did you notice that? They're humongous. They're much taller doors than even the proposed delivery door.
Oh yeah,
I would actually almost want them to raise the other one to make both of them line up.
Well, sure.
It just seems kind of like, you know, a dwarf door and this other door. It just seems silly.
But it's not part of their client.
I know.
Okay, does anyone other than Mustafa object to their height?
No.
Not really.
Will you sign on to the resolution regardless?
Where are we? I got
We're
lost.
on Crosby Street.
I'll sign up.
600 Broadway, the back.
The 600 Broadway building that's on Crosby Street.
We're 600 Broadway. Okay.
But no, I'll join whatever the rest of the committee is doing. Obviously.
Okay. Disapproving of the resolution then.
And no one.
You can't. Yeah. Okay. I understand.
I disapprove of your.
No one agrees with me that the target is too large in the.
No one agreed with you on that.
Entrance.
And it won't be lit. It'll look smaller because it's not lit.
That's true.
Okay, we're still on 600 Broadway.
Yeah, and I think we finished it.
Yeah, no, I like the way they detailed the doors. You know, I mean, that's above and beyond what might have happened 5 or 10 years ago. So I think I appreciate the paneling and sort of duplicating that historic bifold door. Of course, they don't operate the way they're designed, but details. These are swinging doors as opposed to the kind of bifold shutter doors.
I said something about that in the whereases is.
Okay.
About the moving the lintel to save it. No. The only thing exception we're taking to this then is not to illuminate the sign. Everybody's agreed on that.
Yes, sir.
The cemetery, 11th Street.
I don't know. Are we even allowed to object to anything there? It's sacred.
Well, the famous piers actually showed up in the picture that she went back to that showed the degraded brick.
I support the elm tree.
I thought the tree thing was a very good selection.
I admire their adjusting the wall to the presence of the elm tree.
It also gives a nice view of the cemetery. You really can glimpse into it. Otherwise, it's very closed off. So it does two good things.
I agree.
It was a very thoughtfully considered proposal and respectful, thoughtful. I wholeheartedly support it.
I concur.
And what I didn't tell them is that woman is really, really rich, who's a friend of mine, and will probably send them enough to pay for the wall. But that will be her decision.
Send her the presentation.
It was interesting too to see how that little triangle came about. You know, the overlay of the grids.
Yes.
Well,
and
there's probably a plaque.
Being an actual authority on historic cemeteries.
That's right. Well, specialized.
Meanwhile, the Wanamaker people live at 770 Broadway.
You mean the Facebook building?
Oh, don't
The
call it
Wanamaker
that.
building. I called it St. Petersburg through all the revolutions, so I could call it the Wanamaker building.
All right, so we're on to 770.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Won't individual tenants be coming back to us with their own projects on every one of these many, many storefronts?
Only if they want to make an exception to what the master plan is.
I bet they
Which
do.
they can't really. The only question would be signage, and that's also part of the master plan. Frequently we get a master plan that has a blank sandbine.
It's also designed for retail, by the way, for the benefits of retail. It's glass, 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 and that's what they're looking for. So I don't think they're going to want to close it up if, so I think it addresses it. Well,
And the 18-inch
okay.
the 18-inch rule will keep us from having things like that health food store on Hudson Street that's so ugly.
Oh, you mean with walls on
Just
the inside?
a wall, yeah. They obviously want to get more shelf space, so they just pluck an ugly poster on the back of it.
I will say the only thing I see as a missed opportunity is that these louvers have to look like the absolute most basic, ordinary louvers, when they even have a beautiful example from 1913 of a decorative louver. It doesn't seem so hard to do. To me, those horizontal, it's the bottom of the barrel. Yeah, it's fine, but it could actually be elevated, but that might be asking too much.
Can we suggest that though? Can we?
It could be the not denying less, but with the recommendation that the louvers be. I'm sorry, Sue. I talked on top of you. I didn't hear you.
No. I would like to see a recommendation that the louvers, that they reconsider a more decorative louver.
Of a more historical design.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes. Other than that, I thought it was really nicely done. I mean, they did manage to pull it together with this magic spandrel glass that's supposed to, be obscured. And I guess I could buy into that because they're really trying to get that taller height. So I understand the motivation behind it.
And it was all helped by having approved the current large tenant with a large entranceway.
Right, exactly.
Replacing the Wanamaker. So they followed we took a great deal of time on that, and they followed it well. Most people come on Monday.
Yeah, I'll try.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And our time all of us will have to be considered the time, because we have to end when we end because of the other meeting, which is always a good idea to have a terminal.
Can we get the proposal before Monday? It's not yet available.
It's not on the website yet. Okay.
The website is actually still in August.
No, it's been updated.
There's it's an updated link. If you have a link to a specific page, like the August calendar on the old site, I'll put the new address in the chat. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, thanks, Valerie.
Yeah.
So you do have.
I rented the same thing as well. So
you do have the application so that we can see it. before Monday?
I'm going to ask about it tomorrow. I hadn't checked the website.
Okay,
So
because we're not going to have a lot of time to, and it is a new structure on an empty lot.
It is not on the website right now.
No.
What is the address?
72 Grand Street. I'm looking through my emails to see if I have anything, but I don't believe I do.
I just did a.
There seems to be two websites, the old one and the new one. The new one looks gorgeous, but that gets a little confusing for people coming in, and you see the old website and the new website. But
It has to do with apparently with the way it's stored on your computer.
yeah, I know, village preservation.
You have to
is dealing with
clean
it
out.
too. But the new website looks amazing.
Yes, it's much
And it's so easy to navigate. I do not.
Oh, we lost you, Chanel.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question about 770 Broadway.
Okay.
Are we looking? Were we supposed to look at this, like the storefront details as well? I mean, are we not concerned that all this stuff is just aluminum like construction, aluminum framed? Does this not bother us at all? I mean, if we're asking for decorative sort of grills, is it an opportunity to ask them for something, I don't know, less?
I
like
think
something-
we're on shaky ground because we approved the one that they copied. It's a missed opportunity if that was the case.
I see. Okay. It's just such a beautiful building. We've seen this building like 3 different times.
Oh, yeah.
In like 3 or 4 different presentations and presenters.
There's 5 times.
5 times. Yeah.
Okay, I'll see most of you on Monday. Anyone who... Yes.
Here's a question in the chat if you could, about 770 Broadway.
What is it?
It's asking to confirm.
It's too late.
Okay. All right.
What was that, a comment?
Oh, I thought you were going to read the chat. It just says, it's the applicant asking to confirm what was the vote for 770 Broadway to approve with a recommendation for grills in front of the louvers. It's just late, so I just didn't want to answer and misspeak. It's just asking what the approval was.
Oh, well, it'll come out eventually.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
No, just say, no, it's as though they stayed and listened to us and they would know. Just say the sign not illuminated and his, I'm sorry, which one?
It's for 770 Broadway. I mean, if you just want to answer the question directly, I'm not going to type anything. Just they're on the call. I mean, there's just a question.
Oh, somebody's here. Okay.
Yeah, somebody is here.
We're
not trying to email anyone. No.
We're approving it and asking for louvers to be a more historic design. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all. If anyone can't attend on Monday night and has comments, send them in an email, and I will incorporate them into the testimony.
Good night.
Thank you,
Chanel.
Good night.
And Valerie's about to be arrested because there's a police car outside her.
Yeah, it's the sound of the police.
Okay. Thank you all.
Hey, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Your cupboard is beautiful still.